They laughed when she married a simple mountain wolf, not knowing he was the alpha heir. The highland wind cut across the eastern ridge like a blade as Lina Everwyn hauled 2 heavy wool-drying frames toward the dying shed. At 24 winters old, her face showed the strain of invisible labor, the kind that kept a pack running but earned no recognition at gatherings. Her rough spun tunic, patched at the elbows, marked her as clearly as any brand: essential worker, unsuitable bride. The frame's rough wood bit into her palms, adding new calluses to hands already hardened by years of work no one else in her household would touch. She was known throughout the Highland pack as the overlooked daughter, the Everwyn girl who'd passed prime marriageable age, and according to the sharp whispers of other families' daughters, wasn't suited for much beyond her current station. Her family treated her more like hired hands than kin, constantly reminding her that she brought no alliances, no status, no glory to their name. Every morning she rose before dawn to process wool, maintain the dye vats, gather mountain herbs, and endure the casual dismissals from a mother who made no secret of her disappointment in having a daughter she considered wasted potential. Hello, friend. Before we journey deeper into Lina's story, I invite you to subscribe and share in the comments where you're listening from. Your presence here matters. Now, let's continue. That particularly bitter autumn morning, Lina felt the frame's weight cutting deeper than usual. She stopped near a cluster of wind-twisted pines, trying to catch her breath before the final climb to the shed. The frames could wait another moment. Her shoulders ached, and the cold air burned her lungs. It was then she heard the sound of steady footfalls on the mountain path above. She glanced up and saw a man descending the high pass trail, maybe 30 winters old, with weather-carved features and a thick dark beard streaked with premature silver. His clothing was purely functional: leather-work trousers worn soft at the knees, a wool shirt reinforced at the shoulders, and heavy boots that had seen countless mountain miles. No pack insignia. No family colors. Nothing to mark him as anyone of consequence. "Let me take those," he said in a voice like distant thunder, already reaching for the frames before she could respond. Lina startled. She wasn't accustomed to help from strangers, especially male pack members who usually looked through her as if she were fog. She tried to refuse politely, but he'd already lifted both frames with an ease that revealed the strength in his arms, the kind built from actual labor, not performance in the training grounds. "You needn't trouble yourself," she murmured, dropping her gaze as she'd learned to do around warriors and heirs. "Where are you headed?" he asked, ignoring her protest and falling into step beside her. "The dying shed. Just beyond the ridge," Lina replied, still uncertain why this stranger was showing her courtesy. As they walked, the man introduced himself simply as Corin, explaining that he worked the high passes, hauling stone from the quarries, timber from the upper forests. Lina knew the high pass work was brutal, isolated, assigned to wolves with no family sponsorship or prospects. It paid in survival, nothing more. Those who took such work were either desperate or invisible. Sometimes both. Corin carried the frames all the way to the shed door, setting them down with care against the weathered wall. The structure was humble: stone foundation, timber frame, a roof that needed patching before winter truly set in. "Thank you for the help," Lina said, reaching for the frames. "It was nothing, Miss Lina," he responded. Something in the way he said her name, not dismissively, not with pity, but with simple respect, made warmth bloom unexpectedly in her chest. "May I know your family name?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. Corin hesitated just a heartbeat. "Just Corin. The mountain's my family, I suppose." He touched his hand briefly to his chest in casual farewell. "Perhaps we'll cross paths again." He turned back toward the high pass trail, leaving Lina standing at the shed door with her heart beating an unfamiliar rhythm. That afternoon, while stirring the indigo vat in the shed's dim interior, Lina couldn't stop thinking about Corin. There was something different about him, a quiet solidity she rarely encountered. When her mother, Lina Everwyn, returned from the pack central market, Lina casually mentioned the encounter. "What man?" Lina asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. "A high pass worker, mother. He helped me with the frames." Lina's expression hardened. "Lina, it's not enough that you're becoming irrelevant. Now you want to give the pack gossips fresh material? A man doesn't help a woman without expectations. Especially not someone from the high passes. They're invisible for a reason. Keep your distance." But Lina knew she'd felt something genuine in that brief encounter, something her mother, hardened by years of measuring worth only in status and alliances, couldn't understand. However, fate was only beginning to weave threads that would transform not just Lina's life, but the entire structure of the Highland Pack in ways no one gathering in the stone halls below could possibly imagine. The following days brought a pattern Lina had never experienced before. Whenever she ventured to the high herb meadows or traveled the ridge paths with her gathering basket, she would encounter Corin. Their meetings became something Lina anticipated with an unfamiliar flutter in her chest. Corin would appear on the mountain paths as if he'd always been there, never intrusive, never demanding, simply present. He'd carry her gathering baskets without being asked, point out herb clusters she'd missed, share water from his leather flask during the midday heat. Their conversations grew longer, moving beyond polite exchanges into genuine dialogue. He asked about her work with uncommon interest, listening when she explained the complexities of natural dyes, the timing required for proper wool processing, the delicate balance of mountain harvest cycles. "Most wolves don't care about such things," she said one afternoon as they descended from the upper meadows together. "Most wolves don't understand that survival depends on more than dominance displays," Corin replied, his amber eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Your work feeds and clothes the pack. That's power, even if they don't recognize it." No one had ever framed her labor that way before. As autumn deepened into early winter, Corin began visiting the dyeing shed directly, often bringing timber for her fires or stone to repair the shed's crumbling foundation. He worked alongside her without expectation of praise, his presence steady and unhurried. One evening, as the first snow began to fall, he asked her to walk with him to his dwelling in the high passes. The cabin sat in a sheltered hollow, built against a massive granite outcropping that provided natural protection from the harshest winds. Lina had expected rough quarters befitting an unattached labour. Instead, she found a structure that revealed careful attention: solid walls, a properly vented hearth, wooden shutters that actually fit their frames. Inside, oil lamps cast warm light over unexpected details, shelves lined with books, maps of territories spread across a work table, tools maintained with obvious care. "You've made a home here," Lina said, running her fingers along a shelf's smooth edge. "I've tried," Corin replied, stoking the fire. "A wolf needs more than survival. He needs a place that reflects who he is, not what others expect him to be." They shared a simple meal that evening: venison stew, dark bread, mountain tea steeped with herbs Lina had gathered. Corin asked her opinion on everything: how to arrange storage for winter provisions, whether the hearth drew properly, what she thought about the maps he studied. He didn't just tolerate her voice, he actively sought it. The evening stretched into night, their conversation flowing like water finding its natural course. When Corin finally walked her back toward the pack's central dwellings, snow falling softly around them, Lina realized something profound had shifted. She'd found partnership where she'd never expected it. Over the following weeks, Corin's courtship, if it could be called that, continued without performance or spectacle. He brought her first snowdrops from the high meadows. He repaired her mother's leaking roof without announcing himself. He sat with her during the longest winter nights, reading aloud from books about distant territories and ancient pack histories. Their relationship deepened through shared silences as much as conversation, through work done side by side and comfortable companionship that required no audience. When Lina's younger sister Silva asked about her frequent absences, Lina answered honestly, "I've been spending time with Corin." Silva's eyes widened. "The high pass labour? Lina, he's nobody. He has no land, no lineage, no prospects. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking he's the first wolf who's treated me like I matter." Word spread quickly through the pack. At market gatherings, other families' daughters whispered behind their hands, their mockery barely concealed. Warriors who'd never noticed Lina before now made crude jokes about her desperation. Even her own family grew concerned in their way, not for her happiness, but for the embarrassment her choice might bring. Her father, Gareth, confronted her one evening as she prepared to meet Corin. "This attachment must end, Lina. The pack is talking. You're making yourself, and this family, ridiculous." "I'm choosing someone who respects me," Lina replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You're choosing obscurity," Marin interjected sharply. "Do you understand what you're throwing away? Any chance of a decent match, any opportunity to improve your station, gone. For what? A mountain wolf with rough hands and no future. For partnership, Lina said quietly. For being seen. Her parents exchanged glances that mixed frustration with resignation. They'd already written her off as a lost investment. If she wanted to compound her worthlessness by binding herself to another invisible wolf, so be it. At least she'd no longer be their burden. When Corin asked her to marry him, he did so without ceremony or grand gesture. They stood in his cabin as winter wind howled outside, and he simply said, "I want to build a life with you, Lina. If you'll have me." She didn't need time to consider. Yes. They announced their intention at the next pack gathering. The laughter was immediate and cruel. Warriors openly mocked Corin's lack of status. Elders questioned whether such a union even merited official recognition. One particularly vocal elder, Corin, stood before the assembled pack and addressed Corin directly. "You bring nothing to this bond. No land, no lineage, no honor earned in service. Why should we sanction this?" Corin didn't respond to the challenge. He simply stood, hand in Lina's, waiting. The head elder, Ravenna, finally spoke. "Pack law doesn't forbid such unions. Let them marry if they choose. It costs us nothing." The dismissal stung worse than outright rejection. They weren't even worth opposing. The wedding ceremony was held on the first day of spring thaw. Lina wore a simple dress she'd dyed herself, deep mountain indigo that reminded her of twilight skies. Corin wore his work clothes, cleaned and mended but bearing the marks of honest labor. No alpha sponsor stood with them. No warriors formed honor guards. The small gathering consisted mostly of curious onlookers who'd come for entertainment. As Lina walked forward to join Corin before the stone altar, whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. Someone laughed outright when Corin took her hand. Another voice called out, "A laborious bride. How far she's fallen." Elder Corin, conducting the ceremony with barely concealed disdain, spoke the traditional words with mechanical precision. "Who claims this bond?" "I do," Corin said, his voice carrying clearly despite the murmurs. "And who accepts this claim?" "I do," Lina replied, lifting her chin and meeting the pack's collective gaze without flinching. Lina and Corin built their life in the high pass cabin through the turning seasons. Spring brought new growth and renewed labor, Corin hauling stone and timber while Lina expanded her herb gardens in the mountain soil. Summer found them working side by side, weathering storms both literal and social. When they appeared together at trading posts or pack gatherings, the mockery had evolved from open laughter to subtle condescension. Other couples simply didn't acknowledge them. Warriors made space on paths not out of respect but dismissal. They'd become what the pack considered them, irrelevant. But in their isolation, something remarkable grew. Lina had never experienced true partnership before, the kind where decisions were made together, where labor was shared without resentment, where silence held comfort instead of judgment. Corin consulted her on everything, from which territories to work to how they should prepare for winter. He taught her to read the maps spread across his work table, explaining boundary lines and territory markers with patience. She taught him the subtleties of her craft, the careful timing required to create lasting colors from mountain plants. Their evenings fell into cherished patterns. Tea brewed from herbs Lina gathered. Bread baked in their stone hearth. Books read aloud by firelight, Corin's deep voice bringing ancient pack histories to life. Lina noticed how he focused particularly on the old laws, the founding principles that had governed packs before dominance challenges became the primary measure of worth. "Why do you study these so carefully?" she asked one night as he pored over a particularly worn text. Corin's hand stilled on the page. For a long moment he didn't answer, and Lina wondered if she'd overstepped some boundary. Then he spoke quietly, "Because the old ways understood something we've forgotten. Leadership isn't about who can dominate others. It's about who can serve the pack's true needs." 3 months into their marriage, subtle observations began accumulating in Lina's awareness. She noticed how older wolves occasionally deferred to Corin without seeming to realize it, stepping aside on narrow paths, lowering their eyes briefly when passing. She saw how visiting elders sometimes started when they glimpsed his face, as if recognizing something they couldn't quite place. Once, a traveling wolf from a distant territory actually stopped mid-sentence when Corin entered the trading post, his expression shifting from casual interest to something like shock before he quickly departed. When Lina mentioned these moments to Corin, he would simply say, "People see what they expect to see." We're not what they expect. The pattern held until the first frost of their second autumn. Together. That morning began like any other, Corin preparing to work the high quarries while Lina tended her final herb harvest before winter. They were sharing breakfast when they heard urgent footfalls approaching the cabin. A young runner appeared at their door, breathless from the climb. Alpha Thorn is dead, he announced without preamble. Passed in his sleep last night. The elders call all adult wolves to gather for succession council at midday. Lina felt Corin's entire body tense beside her. She glanced at him and saw something she'd never witnessed before. His hand had tightened around his teacup until the ceramic showed hairline cracks. His jaw was set, and his eyes held a strange mixture of resignation and something deeper she couldn't name. We'll attend, Corin told the runner, his voice carefully neutral. After the messenger left, an uncomfortable silence filled the cabin. Lina wanted to ask what had caused his reaction, but something in his stillness warned her to wait. Finally, Corin stood and moved to the wooden chest where he kept his few possessions. He withdrew a plain leather pouch she'd never seen before, holding it with a reverence that seemed at odds with its humble appearance. Corin, she ventured. We should prepare, he said, not meeting her eyes. The ceremony will be formal. Lina expected they would pay brief respects and return home quickly. After all, Alpha successions concerned warriors and heirs, not invisible mountain workers. She dressed in her best tunic, still simple but clean and well-maintained. Corin wore his usual work clothes, though he took unusual care with them, and Lina noticed he left his worn gloves on despite the warming sun as they descended toward the pack's central gathering hall. The great stone hall had been built generations ago, its massive granite blocks fitted together with ancient skill. Burning torches lined the walls despite the daylight, lending the space a ceremonial gravity. Pack members filed in, arranging themselves according to complex social hierarchies Lina had never fully understood. Warriors positioned themselves prominently. Families with lineage claims took honored positions. Elders sat in a raised semicircle at the hall's head. Lina and Corin were directed to the very back, behind even the youngest and bonded wolves. The pack member guiding them barely glanced at them, his dismissal casual and complete. They took their places in the shadows as the hall filled with hundreds of pack members. Whispers buzzed like insects as people noticed them. Why is the stone hauler even here? Someone muttered. Does he think succession concerns him? Another voice asked, followed by quiet laughter. Alpha Thorn had led the Highland Pack for 40 years, but he'd never publicly acknowledged an heir. The succession was therefore open to claims based on bloodline proximity, demonstrated leadership, or combat prowess. As the ceremony began, 3 warriors stepped forward to present their cases. Garon, a massive enforcer known for brutal efficiency, claimed leadership through martial strength, displaying scars from countless dominance challenges. Marek, a politically connected warrior, presented alliance offers from neighboring territories. Thessa, cunning and ambitious, argued her bloodline connected to Thorn's grandmother's sister's line, making her the closest living relative. Each presentation was elaborate, supported by sponsors who spoke eloquently of the candidates' qualifications. The hall buzzed with whispered debates about which claim held most merit. Lina found herself simultaneously bored by the political theater and fascinated by the complex power dynamics playing out before her. Then head elder Ravenna stood, and the hall fell silent. She held a scroll sealed with black obsidian, a seal Lina had never seen before. The elder's hands trembled slightly as she broke the wax. Before we proceed, Ravenna's voice rang out with unexpected force. There is an ancient obligation that must be fulfilled first. She unrolled the scroll, and several elders leaned forward, their faces going pale as they read the text. 30 years ago, Ravenna continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall, Alpha Thorn made a choice that saved a life but hid a truth. That truth, by pack law and his own decree, must now be revealed. Ravenna's voice cut through the expectant silence like a blade through silk. I call forward Corin Ashenmore, son of Kale, firstborn of the Winter Line, heir by blood to the Highland Pack. The name hung in the air like smoke. Confusion rippled through the crowd, most had never heard that name before. But among the eldest wolves, Lina saw recognition dawn like a terrible sunrise. Their faces shifted from confusion to shock, then to something approaching fear. Corin didn't move immediately. Lina felt his entire body rigid beside her, every muscle tense as if preparing for battle or flight. The seconds stretched unbearably. Then, slowly, he stood. The movement itself changed something fundamental. Where before he'd held himself with quiet restraint, now his posture carried an authority that seemed to emanate from his very bones. He walked forward through the crowd. And Lina watched something extraordinary happen. Wolves who moments before had ignored or dismissed him now instinctively moved aside. It wasn't conscious deference, it was something deeper, more primal. Warriors who'd mocked him at their wedding found themselves stepping back without understanding why. The path cleared before him as if the pack itself recognized what their conscious minds refused to accept. When Corin reached the elders' semicircle, he stood before them with his head unbowed. No submission in his stance, but no aggression either. Simply presence, undeniable and absolute. Ravenna's eyes held sympathy and sadness in equal measure. The pack deserves explanation, she said, and turned to address the assembled wolves. 43 years ago, Alpha Thorn took a mate, Ilara of the Northern Ridge. They had 3 children. 3 heirs to continue the winter line. Lina felt cold spreading through her chest. 3 heirs. Past tense. The 2 youngest died in what was recorded as a hunting accident, Ravenna continued, her voice heavy with old grief. They were 5 and 7 years old. But it was no accident. It was assassination, an attempt to destabilize succession and create opportunity for those who coveted power. Gasps echoed through the hall. This history had been hidden, the truth buried under official lies. Ilara died of grief 3 months later. And Thorn faced an impossible choice, lose his remaining son to the same conspirators, or hide him so completely that not even enemies could find him. Ravenna paused, letting the weight settle. He chose his son's life over his own legacy. She turned to Corin. The firstborn was sent to the high passes with guardian Darius, a wolf sworn to secrecy unto death. The child was raised knowing his heritage but forbidden from claiming it. Hidden in plain sight, protected by obscurity itself. This is absurd, Garen's voice boomed from the front. Anyone could claim such a story. Where's the proof? Ravenna's expression hardened. Remove your gloves, Corin. Another long pause. Lina saw something flash across Corin's face, not fear, but profound reluctance, as if removing those gloves meant removing the last protection between his old life and whatever came next. He pulled off the worn leather slowly, deliberately, and Lina's breath caught. Ancient pack marks covered both his wrists. Intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer with faint luminescence in the torchlight. These weren't tattoos or paint. They were bloodline marks, the kind that manifested only in direct alpha lineage, marks that couldn't be faked or forged because they were written into the very essence of a wolf's being. The hall erupted. Voices shouting over one another. Denial, accusation, stunned acceptance. Warriors who'd claimed succession looked as if the ground had dissolved beneath them. Families who'd positioned themselves to support other candidates now scrambled to recalculate political landscapes. Ravenna raised her hand for silence. I have documentation sealed by Thorn himself, witnessed by the elder council of that time. Birth records. Guardian testimonies. Blood verification performed when Corin reached maturity. She produced a leather folder thick with aged parchment. Everything required by pack law to establish legitimate succession. Elder Sorn, who'd conducted Corin and Lina's wedding with such disdain, now stood with his face drained of color. Guardian Darius, he died 5 years ago. He did. Corin spoke for the first time since being called forward, his voice resonating with an authority Lina had never heard before. He raised me, taught me, prepared me for something I hoped would never come. His amber eyes swept the crowd. I knew at 15 winters who I was. What I was meant to become. And I chose to remain in the mountains, hoping succession might somehow pass differently. You hid, Marek accused, his political instincts already working to undermine. You abandoned your responsibility. I survived, Corin corrected, and there was steel beneath the quiet words. As my father intended. And in surviving, I learned what it means to live without privilege, without automatic respect, without the distortions that power creates. His gaze found Lina in the back of the hall. I learned what wolves truly are when stripped of performance and pretense. Thessa stepped forward, her cunning mind already pivoting. If this is true, then you'll need advisors. Wolves who understand pack politics, who know how to navigate. I need nothing from those who would have ignored me yesterday. Corin interrupted, his tone leaving no room for manipulation. I am the same wolf who hauled your stone and mended your walls. That hasn't changed. What has changed is your awareness of it. The hall fell into uncomfortable silence. Warriors who'd made crude jokes about Lina's desperate choice now couldn't meet Corin's eyes. Families who'd dismissed their wedding as irrelevant entertainment now realized they'd publicly mocked their alpha heir and his chosen mate. Lina remained frozen in the back, mind racing. Everything she thought she knew had been simultaneously confirmed and overturned. Corin had been hiding, yes, but he'd also been honest in every way that mattered. He'd never lied about his values, his character, his vision for what leadership should be. He'd simply omitted the bloodline that would have made people treat him differently. Part of her wanted to be angry. He'd kept this secret through their entire courtship, their marriage, months of building a life together. But another part understood. If he'd told her, everything would have changed. She might have questioned her own motives. Others certainly would have. The genuine partnership they'd built would have been poisoned by suspicion from the start. Ravenna's voice cut through her thoughts. Corin Ashenmore, do you accept the responsibility of alpha succession? Corin's jaw tightened. For a heartbeat, Lina thought he might refuse. Then his eyes found hers again across the crowded hall, and she saw the question there. Can you accept this? She didn't know the answer. But she stood, drawing every eye in the hall to her position among the invisible wolves at the back. She didn't speak, didn't move forward. She simply stood, present, witnessing, not abandoning him to face this alone. Something in Corin's expression softened. He turned back to Ravenna. I accept the responsibility, but I will not lead as others have. Explain, Ravenna commanded. I will end blood challenges as primary succession method. I will open council to voices beyond warriors, craftspeople, healers, those who maintain pack function without glory. I will redistribute high pass territories fairly rather than by dominance hierarchy. His voice grew stronger with each declaration. And I will not rule alone. My mate, chosen before any of you knew my name, will stand as Luna with full council voice. The hall exploded again. Traditionalists shouted objections. Progressives murmured approval. Warriors looked outraged that their dominance games might be curtailed. Through it all, Lina remained standing in the back, her heart pounding so hard she thought the entire pack must hear it. Luna. The word felt impossible, absurd. Yesterday she'd been invisible. Today she was being offered the highest position a female wolf could hold. Garen's voice rose above the chaos. You've proven nothing except bloodline. Pack law allows challenges for succession. I invoke trial by worth. Ravenna nodded gravely. That is your right. Corin, do you accept? I do. Then 3 trials will be held, Ravenna announced. Strength, wisdom, and heart. Each must be passed to claim alpha position. She fixed Corin with a meaningful look. And your mate must also prove herself worthy of Luna's status. She will face her own trials. Lina's stomach dropped. She hadn't chosen this. She'd chosen Corin, the quiet mountain wolf who treated her with respect. Now she was expected to prove herself before a pack that had dismissed her entire life. But as she caught Corin's eyes across the hall, she saw something that steadied her. He wasn't asking her to perform or transform into something she wasn't. He was simply asking, will you face this with me? The council decreed 3 days before the trials would begin. 3 days for Corin to prepare, for challengers to strategize, for the pack to adjust to revelations that had overturned their entire understanding of their own history. Lina and Corin walked back to their mountain cabin in silence, surrounded by falling snow that muffled the world into something almost peaceful. Once inside, with the door closed against watching eyes and judging whispers, Lina finally spoke. How long have you known? Corin stood by the hearth, his bare wrist still showing those impossible marks. Since I was 15. Darius told me everything that winter, who I was, what had happened, why I could never claim it. He turned to face her. He made me promise to stay hidden unless Thorn died naturally. Said the conspirators who killed my siblings were still out there, still waiting. 30 years you've carried this alone. Not alone. His eyes met hers. Not since you. But you never told me. The words came out sharper than she intended. Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was either delusional or manipulating you? Corin moved closer but didn't touch her. Lina, I needed someone to see me as I actually am, not as what bloodline makes me. You gave me that. You married me thinking I was nobody, nothing. That meant everything. Lina felt tears burning behind her eyes. I'm angry you kept this secret. And I understand why you did. Both things are true. Both things can be true, Corin agreed softly. She moved into his arms then, and they stood together in the firelight, holding each other against the weight of impossible futures. The first day brought visitors. Warriors seeking early alliances. Elders requesting private audiences. Families bearing gifts they hoped would curry future favor. Corin handled each interaction with careful courtesy and absolute refusal to commit to anything. He made no promises, accepted no pledges, gave no indication of how he might govern. Lina watched him navigate these political waters with surprising skill. He listened more than he spoke, asked questions that revealed more about the questioner than any answer could, and maintained boundaries without offense. This wasn't the quiet mountain wolf she'd married, or rather, it was, but now she could see the leadership that had always existed beneath the deliberately cultivated invisibility. Late that afternoon, Lina's family arrived. Her father Gareth entered the cabin with unusual hesitance, her mother Marin following with an expression that attempted warmth but achieved only calculation. Silver trailed behind, looking genuinely uncomfortable. Daughter, Gareth began, his voice carrying unfamiliar respect. We owe you an apology. We failed to see, to understand. You saw exactly what you wanted to see, Lina interrupted quietly. Someone worthless marrying someone equally worthless. That was your truth, and you lived it fully. Marin stepped forward. We were protecting you, Lina. Trying to prevent you from making what seemed like a terrible mistake. By treating me like a burden? By dismissing everything I contributed? By laughing along with others at my wedding? Lina's voice remained steady, but each word landed like a stone. You didn't protect me. You diminished me. The only mistake was believing I needed your validation. We hoped, Gareth said carefully, that given your new position, there might be opportunities for the family to benefit from association you did nothing to own. Corin's voice cut through from where he stood by the hearth. You want council positions? Territory rights? Political leverage? Gareth had the grace to look embarrassed. Marin's face hardened into familiar lines of resentment. Here's what I offer, Lina said before either parent could respond. You may remain in the pack with dignity and respect, the same rights as any other family. But you will have no special status, no preferential treatment, no power you haven't earned through service. She paused. And if you ever treat another young wolf the way you treated me, I will personally ensure your family loses what status it has. Silver spoke for the first time. That's fair. More than fair. She looked at Lina with something like admiration. I was wrong about you. About him. About everything, really. Then learn from it, Lina replied, her tone softening slightly toward her sister. And be better than we were raised to be. After they left, Corin pulled Lina close. That took strength. I'm angrier than you are, she realized aloud. How are you not furious at everyone who dismissed you, mocked you, treated you like nothing? I was angry. For years. Corin's voice was distant, remembering. But anger becomes exhausting when you carry it alone for decades. Eventually I just became careful. Watchful. I stopped expecting anything from them, which meant they couldn't disappoint me. He looked down at her. Until you. You surprised me by seeing past what everyone else saw. Or didn't see. The second day brought Elder Ravenna privately. She sat at their table, looking older than her years, burden of old secrets weighing visibly. I need you to understand what you're facing, she told them both. The trials won't be simple. Garon, Marek, and Thessa have formed a temporary alliance to undermine you. They are spreading rumors, that you're weak, that you'll destroy traditions, that Lina manipulated you before revealing your identity. Let them talk, Corin said. It's more than talk. They're turning wolves against you before you've even proven yourself. Ravenna turned to Lina. And you face separate challenges. Female elders will question your worthiness publicly. They'll suggest Corin should choose a more suitable mate, someone with lineage, training, political connections. Lina felt ice spreading through her veins. They want him to renounce me. They want to test whether he can put pack above personal attachment. It's traditional in contested successions. Ravenna's eyes held sympathy. I'm sorry, child. But you need to prepare for questions that will cut deep. After Ravenna left, Lina walked to the cabin's small window, staring out at snow-covered mountains. Maybe they're right. Maybe you should choose someone better suited. Don't. Corin's voice was sharp. He crossed to her, turning her to face him. You are the only choice I've made that was entirely free. Everything else in my life has been shaped by secrets, by protection, by obligations I didn't choose. You chose me when I was nobody. I chose you for exactly who you are. That doesn't change because circumstances do. But leading a pack requires. It requires integrity, partnership, the ability to see wolves others overlook. His hands framed her face gently. You have all of that. You always have. The third morning arrived too quickly. Corin rose before dawn and walked the mountain passes one final time, saying goodbye to the simple life they'd built. Lina joined him without asking, understanding his need to grieve what they were losing even as they stepped toward what came next. They talked about what kind of leaders they wanted to be. Not dominating, but serving. Not performing strength, but embodying it through consistency and care. Not claiming power over others, but sharing power with them. If we do this, Corin said as sunrise painted the mountains gold, we do it our way. No pretense. No performance. We lead as ourselves, or not at all. Lina took his hand, the same hand that had carried her gathering baskets when everyone else ignored her. Then we do it together. They descended the mountain hand in hand as morning light broke across the highland peaks. The great stone hall awaited them, already filled with hundreds of pack members who'd gathered to witness what many hoped would be Corin's public humiliation. The crowd parted as they entered, not with respect, but with the morbid curiosity of wolves anticipating blood sport. The elder council sat in their raised semicircle, faces unreadable. Corin stood at the hall's center, massive arms crossed, a predator's smile playing across his scarred face. Marek watched from the shadows, his calculating eyes missing nothing. Thessa positioned herself among influential families, already working her political angles. Elder Ravenna stood, her voice carrying through the sudden silence. Corin Ashenmore, you have accepted your claim to alpha succession. Do you now formally accept the trials of worthiness? Corin stepped forward, still wearing his plain work clothes while others had dressed in ceremonial garb. I do. 3 trials you must face, Ravenna announced. Strength, to prove you can protect the pack. Wisdom, to prove you can guide it. Heart, to prove you can lead it. She paused, letting the weight settle. Fail any trial, and your claim is forfeit. I understand. Ravenna's eyes shifted to Lina. And Lina Everwyn, as chosen mate to the heir, you must also prove yourself worthy of Luna status. The female elders will question you separately. Lina's stomach clenched, but she nodded. I accept. Corin stepped forward, his bulk casting shadows across the stone floor. I challenge for the trial of strength. Let's see if royal blood makes you less breakable than common wolves. The crowd murmured with anticipation. Traditional trial combat was brutal. No rules beyond survival, no mercy expected. Warriors had died in such challenges, their blood staining the ceremonial stones. The trial begins at midday, Ravenna declared. Prepare yourselves. As the formal gathering dispersed, Corin was immediately surrounded by wolves offering advice, pledging support, or simply wanting to be seen near potential power. Lina watched him handle each interaction with the same careful neutrality he'd shown for days. He made no promises, accepted no favors, gave nothing away. A young wolf approached Lina hesitantly, barely past his 20th winter, with earnest eyes and work-roughened hands. Luna-to-be? I wanted to say, what you did, marrying him when everyone mocked you both? That took courage. Some of us saw it. Some of us understood. Before Lina could respond, her sister Silver appeared, pulling the young wolf aside. Give her space, Silver said gently, then turned to Lina. They're already circling. Everyone wants something from you now. I have nothing to give them. You have everything they want, access to him, influence over him, the appearance of favor. Silver's expression was troubled. I came to warn you. The female elders are gathering. They're not kind, Lina. They'll try to break you. Why warn me now? You laughed at my wedding too. Silver flinched but held her ground. I did. I was cruel because everyone else was, and I wanted to belong more than I wanted to be decent. She met Lina's eyes directly. I can't undo that. But I can try to be better now. Even if you don't believe me. Lina studied her sister, really looked at her for perhaps the first time in years. Saw past the pretty face and perfect manners to the insecurity beneath. Then be better. Not for me, for yourself. The morning passed in tense preparation. Allies began emerging from unexpected places. Darius's old friends, wolves who'd worked the high passes with Corin, younger pack members tired of dominance games and hungry for different leadership. But enemies consolidated too. The three rival warriors met in shadowed corners, their alliance against Corin growing stronger. Just before midday, the female elders summoned Lina to a private chamber. 7 older she-wolves sat in judgment, their faces ranging from skeptical to openly hostile. Elder Sorn's mate, Helda, led the questioning. You married Corin Ashenmore when you believed him to be a simple laborer with no prospects. Explain why we should believe this wasn't manipulation. Lina had expected this question. How could I manipulate someone by marrying them when they had nothing? What would I gain? The chance that he was hiding something valuable, another elder suggested coldly. Perhaps you knew his secret all along. I didn't know. And if I had, it would have changed everything, not because I wanted his power, but because the genuine partnership we built would have been poisoned by suspicion from the start. Lina's voice remained steady. I married him because he was the first wolf who treated me like I mattered. That's not manipulation. That's recognizing worth others refused to see. But now you claim Luna status, Helda pressed. A position requiring training, lineage, political skill, none of which you possess. I claim nothing. I accept what is offered, just as I accepted his marriage proposal. Lina met each elder's gaze in turn. You're asking if I'm worthy. Ask yourselves if you're worthy of being led. How many of you laughed at our wedding? How many dismissed us as irrelevant? You failed to see an alpha heir living among you for 30 years. Perhaps the problem isn't my worthiness, but your blindness. The chamber fell silent. Several elders looked uncomfortable. Helda's face darkened with anger. You dare speak to us this way? I speak truth. If truth offends you, examine why. This is exactly why you're unsuitable, Helda snapped. No respect for tradition, no understanding of proper deference. I have respect for traditions that serve the pack's well-being, Lina interrupted. Deference that's demanded rather than owned isn't respect. It's performance. I won't perform for you or anyone else. Elder Ravenna entered the chamber, her timing too precise to be accidental. Enough. The trial of strength begins. Lina's questioning will continue after. As they walked toward the arena, Ravenna spoke quietly. You're making enemies. I'm being honest. I can't be both. Good. We need fewer performers and more truth-tellers. Ravenna's eyes held approval. But be ready. They'll come at you harder now. The arena was an ancient stone circle open to the sky, its floor stained with generations of blood. The entire pack surrounded it, pressed close to witness. Corin stood at one end, removing his shirt to reveal a body honed by years of mountain labor, lean muscle and old scars that told stories of solitary survival. Garon waited opposite, twice Corin's bulk, covered in the raised tissue of countless battles. Ravenna's voice rang out. The trial of strength. No weapons. No interference. Combat ends when one cannot continue or yields. She paused. Begin. Garon charged immediately, trying to use his superior size to overwhelm quickly. Corin sidestepped with surprising grace, letting momentum carry his opponent past. The crowd roared. Garon spun, faster than his bulk suggested possible, and connected with a blow that sent Corin sliding across stone. Lina's hands clenched. She wanted to look away but forced herself to watch. This was the cost of their choice, blood price for truth revealed. Corin rose, testing his jaw where Garon's fist had landed. Then he moved in, and Lina saw the difference. Garon fought to dominate, to prove superiority through overwhelming force. Corin fought to endure, to overcome, using precision where others used power. He weathered brutal hits, absorbed punishment that should have ended him, and kept coming back. Your father was weak too, Corin snarled during a grapple, loud enough for front rows to hear. That's why he hid you like a coward. That's why your siblings died like prey. Corin's eyes flashed amber fire. For a heartbeat Lina thought he'd lose control, give Corin the rage-fueled response he wanted. Instead, Corin's voice came out quiet, deadly calm. My father saved my life. Your words can't diminish that. Then he moved, a combination of strikes so precise, so perfectly timed, that Corin's defenses crumbled. Within moments, Corin had the larger wolf pinned, one arm locked, throat exposed. The arena held its breath. Strength isn't always violence, Corin said clearly, speaking not just to Corin but to the assembled pack. It's knowing when violence is necessary and when mercy is stronger. He released Corin and stepped back. The warrior could have continued fighting, probably would have in traditional challenges. But something in Corin's eyes, some quality beyond physical dominance, made Corin lower his gaze and step back. The trial of strength is past, Ravenna announced, though her voice held surprise. The heir has proven himself without unnecessary bloodshed. Mixed reactions rippled through the crowd. Some cheered. Others muttered disappointment that the fight hadn't been more brutal. Warriors looked uncertain. This wasn't how dominance was supposed to work. Corin's eyes found Lina's across the arena. Blood ran from a cut above his eye, bruises already darkening his ribs, but his gaze was steady. She nodded once. One trial down. 2 to go. The trial of wisdom was announced for the following morning, giving Corin one night to recover from injuries that would have hospitalized a lesser wolf. Lina cleaned and dressed his wounds in their cabin while he sat unusually still, letting her work in silence. Does it hurt? She asked, knowing it was a foolish question. Everything hurts. That's not new. His hand caught hers gently. Are you all right? The female elders were exactly what I expected. Hostile, suspicious, determined to prove I'm unsuitable. Lina finished wrapping his ribs. I spoke truth. They didn't like it. Truth rarely wins popularity. Then we'll be unpopular together. Morning brought another crowd to the Great Hall, though this audience was different. Fewer warriors, more elders and advisors, wolves who valued strategy over strength. The trial of wisdom would test Corin's ability to lead through judgment rather than force. Marek stepped forward as questioner, his political instincts sharp as blades. An impossible scenario for you, heir. 2 families claim the same territory, the Greys and the Silvers. Both have legitimate historical rights. The Greys were granted the land 3 generations ago for service in border wars. The Silvers held it for a century before that but lost it during the succession struggles. Both families have documents, witnesses, undeniable claims. As Alpha, how do you decide? The traditional solution was obvious. Favor the stronger family, the one with more warriors, better political connections. Pack hierarchy rewarded power, not fairness. Corin was silent for a long moment, studying the fabricated maps Marek had provided. Then he did something unexpected. I need to speak with both families. Bring them forward. Marek's confidence flickered. He'd expected a quick decision, not investigation. Actors were brought forward to play the disputing families. Corin questioned them carefully, not about their claims, but about their needs. What did they actually use the territory for? What resources mattered most? The Grey family representative spoke of hunting grounds essential for winter survival. The Silver family elder mentioned a sacred spring that held religious significance and provided year-round water. Corin examined the maps again, then traced a new boundary with his finger. The territory has 2 distinct values, hunting grounds to the north, sacred spring to the south. I divide it thus. Greys receive hunting rights to northern sections. Silvers maintain the spring and surrounding lands. Both families share boundary maintenance responsibilities, which creates obligation to cooperate rather than compete. Silence filled the hall. The solution was so simple, so obvious once stated, that its absence from traditional thinking became glaring. Wolves didn't share territory, they dominated or surrendered it. But Corin had found a third path. Marek tried to undermine it. This creates precedent for weakness. Wolves will expect compromise instead of clear hierarchy. It creates precedent for justice, Corin replied. If justice seems weak, examine your values, not mine. He turned to address the broader assembly. Strength through domination breeds resentment. Strength through fairness breeds loyalty. Which do you think sustains a pack longer? Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, others troubled by implications. Elder Ravenna stood. The trial of wisdom is past. The heir has demonstrated judgment that serves pack welfare over tradition alone. 2 trials complete. 1 remained, the most dangerous. That afternoon, the female elders summoned Lina again. This time the chamber held more witnesses, making the questioning public. Helda stood as primary interrogator, her face carved from judgment itself. The final trial for your mate will be Hart, proving he can put pack above personal desires. Your presence complicates this. Helda's voice carried through the chamber. We question whether you're suitable as Luna. You lack training, lineage, political skill. Your marriage was made in ignorance of his status. A true alpha should choose a mate who strengthens the pack, not one who merely happened to be convenient. Lina had known this was coming, but hearing it stated so boldly still cut deep. Therefore, Helda continued, we propose a test. If you truly care for Corin and the pack's well-being, step aside. Release him from obligations made under false circumstances. Allow him to choose a more suitable mate who can properly support his leadership. The chamber held its breath. Thessa watched from the shadows, satisfaction obvious in her calculating eyes. This had been her idea, use Lina's own honor against her, make stepping aside seem like the selfless choice. Lina stood slowly, feeling every eye upon her. For a heartbeat she considered it. Corin would be free to choose someone trained for this, someone who wouldn't be questioned at every turn, someone who could navigate politics with practiced ease. Then she remembered something fundamental. She hadn't chosen Corin for his status. She'd chosen him for his character. And that character had chosen her when she was nothing, nobody, invisible. If she stepped aside now, she'd validate every judgment the pack had made about her worthlessness. No, she said clearly. Helda's eyebrows rose. You refuse. I refuse the premise of your test. You're not asking what's best for the pack. You're asking whether I'll diminish myself to appease your disapproval. Lina's voice grew stronger. I married Corin when you all laughed. I saw his worth when you saw nothing. He treated me as equal when my own family treated me as burden. That choice was made freely, honestly, without agenda. She turned to address everyone present. If he's your alpha, respect his judgment. If you can't respect his judgment in choosing a mate, then question his fitness to lead, not mine. But don't ask me to validate your prejudices by sacrificing a partnership built on genuine respect. This is exactly why you're unsuitable, Helda snapped. No humility, no grace. I have humility toward things that matter and grace toward wolves who've earned it. You've earned neither. Lina stepped forward. I won't perform weakness to make you comfortable. I won't diminish what we built to satisfy your expectations. And I won't abandon him to appease wolves who measure worth by bloodline and performance rather than character. The trial of Hart was called for the next morning. The entire pack gathered once more, sensing this would be the decisive moment. Corin stood before the council, still bruised from combat, while Lina was positioned separately, a deliberate staging to emphasize their potential separation. Ravenna explained the trial's terms. You must prove you can put pack welfare above personal attachment. The female elders have deemed Lina unsuitable as Luna. As alpha, you may overrule them, but at cost of division and resistance. Or you may acknowledge their wisdom and choose a more suitable mate. Which serves the pack better? The choice was designed to be impossible. Accept the elder's judgment and lose his integrity. Reject it and appear arrogant, unwilling to compromise. Corin stood silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, voice carrying clearly to every corner of the hall. The trial asks me to choose between Lina and the pack. I refuse the premise. Gasps echoed through the assembly. A leader who abandons their partner to appease others is no leader. A leader who sacrifices personal honor for political gain is no leader. Corin's eyes swept the crowd. I will lead this pack with Lina as Luna, or I will not lead at all. If you find that unacceptable, choose another alpha. Dead silence. This wasn't how trials worked. The heir didn't refuse the terms. You would walk away from everything rather than compromise. Marek asked, disbelief evident. I would walk away from power that requires me to betray someone who trusted me when I was nothing. Corin's voice held absolute certainty. What kind of alpha would that make me? One who keeps his word only when convenient? One who discards loyalty when it becomes inconvenient? That's not leadership. That's opportunism. He looked directly at Ravenna. I am Corin Ashenmore, son of Cale, heir by blood to the Highland Pack. But I am also the wolf Lina Everwyn, married in good faith, choosing partnership over performance. Both truths matter. If you can't accept both, you don't deserve either. The elders convened privately, their hushed debate lasting nearly an hour. When they emerged, Ravenna's face revealed nothing. The trials are complete, she announced. Corin Ashenmore has proven strength without brutality, wisdom without compromise, and heart without weakness. He is recognized as Alpha of the Highland Pack. Cheers erupted from some quarters, silence from others. Ravenna continued, and Lina Everwyn has proven she was never seeking power, only partnership. She is recognized as Luna by choice, not by station. The formal marking ceremony followed immediately. Ancient symbols were painted on Corin's skin with ceremonial ash, patterns that designated Alpha authority. Similar marks were applied to Lina, though hers represented Luna's status, the wolf who stood beside rather than behind leadership. They stood before the assembled pack, hand in hand as always. Some wolves knelt in respect. Others stood in quiet resistance. But everyone watched as two wolves who'd been mocked and dismissed were transformed by truth and trial into something the pack couldn't ignore. The trials are over, Corin said quietly to Lina as ceremony concluded. But the real test, leading wolves who doubt us, is just beginning. She squeezed his hand. Then we begin together. Corin's first act as Alpha sent shockwaves through the pack's traditional power structure. He called an emergency council meeting and announced immediate reforms. The council would expand beyond warriors to include craftspeople, healers, scouts, and resource managers. Wolves who'd spent generations being invisible would now have voices in pack governance. This is madness, Corin protested, though his challenge carried less weight after losing the trial of strength. Warriors protect the pack. Their voices should matter most. Warriors protect the pack's borders, Corin corrected. But craftspeople maintain its infrastructure. Healers preserve its health. Scouts ensure its safety. Every role matters equally. He let that settle before adding, and Lina will sit on this council with full voice, not as my mate, but as Luna with independent authority. The statement was unprecedented. Luna's traditionally advised privately but held no official council position. By granting Lina equal standing, Corin was fundamentally restructuring pack hierarchy. Over the following weeks, resistance emerged in expected and unexpected forms. 3 families chose to leave the pack entirely, refusing to accept leadership they considered weak. Others remained but resisted openly, attending councils only to voice opposition, spreading rumors through market gatherings, undermining every reform with passive aggression. Corin handled each case individually. He didn't exile resistors or punish dissent. Instead, he listened to grievances, identified legitimate concerns beneath political posturing, and made compromises where possible while standing firm on core principles. When a warrior challenged his authority over hunting territory distribution, Corin invited the challenger to present his case before the full council rather than settling it through combat. You're showing weakness, Marek warned during one particularly contentious session. Alphas who listen too much lose control. Alphas who don't listen lose packs, Corin replied. Slowly, grudgingly, even resistors began seeing benefits. Fair resource distribution meant families who'd struggled for generations suddenly had access to better hunting grounds, trading opportunities, winter stores. Wolves who'd felt overlooked found their expertise valued. Young wolves without warrior lineage discovered paths to influence beyond dominance challenges. Lina defined her role as Luna through action rather than declaration. She didn't try to become something she wasn't, didn't adopt the political sophistication of traditional Lunas or perform the graceful authority expected of her position. Instead, she used her intimate understanding of invisibility to identify others in similar positions. She created new roles, mediators to resolve disputes before they required alpha intervention, resource managers to ensure fair distribution, family advocates to represent wolves without political connections. She became the voice for wolves who weren't heard before, and earned respect not through performance but through genuine care. One afternoon, as she mediated a dispute between two families over shared grazing land, the older wolves involved suddenly stopped mid-argument. "You actually understand," one said, surprise evident in her voice. "You're not just performing leadership. You know what it's like to be dismissed." "I do," Lina confirmed. "And I won't let that continue under our leadership." 6 months into their tenure, Lina's family requested a private audience. She granted it, though with Corin present, not because she needed protection, but because they faced everything together now. Gareth and Marin entered with rehearsed humility, but their agenda showed quickly. "We've been thinking," Gareth began carefully, "that given our family connection to the Luna, there might be opportunities for positions you didn't earn," Lina interrupted. "Status you want but haven't worked for. Influence based on blood relation rather than merit." Marin's face hardened into familiar lines of resentment. "We're family, Lina. Surely that counts for something. Your family who treated me as worthless for 24 years. That debt isn't erased by my new position." Lina's voice remained steady, but each word carried weight. "Here's what I offer. You can remain in the pack with dignity and respect, the same rights as any other family. But you won't have power you didn't earn. You won't benefit from connection you did nothing to deserve." "After everything we did for you," Gareth started. "Everything you did to me," Corin corrected quietly. "There's a difference. And Lina's being generous in offering you anything at all." Silva, who'd accompanied their parents, spoke up. "It's fair. More than fair." She looked at Lina with something approaching admiration. "I want to be better than we were raised to be. If you'll teach me, I'd like to train as a mediator. Not because of our connection, but because I want to earn my place." Lina studied her sister, seeing genuine commitment beneath the request. "Then prove it. Work with the other mediator trainees. Earn their respect first. If you succeed, you'll have earned the role." After they left, Corin pulled Lina close. "That took strength." "I'm still angry," she admitted. "At them, at everyone who dismissed us. But I'm learning that anger can be channeled into building something better rather than just burning." As autumn deepened toward winter, unexpected news arrived. Lina was pregnant. She discovered it first through subtle body changes she recognized from helping the pack's healer with other pregnant wolves. When she told Corin privately, his reaction was complex, joy mixed with fear, understanding that their child would be born into scrutiny and expectation they'd both escaped until recently. "This child will be seen, not hidden," he promised, one hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "Will be raised in truth, not shadow. Will know they are valued for who they are, not what bloodline makes them." They announced it at the next pack gathering. Reactions were predictably mixed, celebration from supporters, political calculation from others already thinking about future succession, whispered concerns about whether Lina was truly suitable to raise an alpha heir. Lina addressed those whispers directly. "This child will be raised in partnership, taught that leadership means service rather than domination, shown that worth comes from character rather than performance. If that troubles you, examine why." The peaceful months were interrupted by a messenger from the neighboring Shadowridge pack. Their alpha, Corin, known for brutal enforcement and territorial aggression, had sent a formal challenge: abandon the reforms or face territorial incursion. Corin viewed Corin's leadership style as weakness that threatened traditional pack hierarchies across all territories. The council debated responses. Some warriors wanted immediate aggressive posturing. Others advocated for appeasement. Corin chose a third path: strategic demonstration of strength without unnecessary violence. "We defend our boundaries and our values. We compromise neither," he announced. Then he personally led a detail to reinforce border positions, not with threats but with clear presence. When Corin arrived with his warriors to test the boundaries, they found not a weak, disorganized pack but unified, well-trained, strategically positioned wolves who radiated quiet confidence. Corin met Corin at the border markers. "You can challenge us and lose, or work with us and thrive. Your choice." Corin had expected bluster or submission. He got neither. After assessing the situation with a warrior's eye, he recognized truth. This pack was stronger through unity than his was through fear. He backed down, respecting the boundary. 1 year after Corin's revelation, the pack gathered for seasonal celebrations. The Great Hall was transformed, not just by decorations, but by the wolves who filled it. Families who'd struggled now thrived. Young wolves found opportunities regardless of lineage. Disputes were resolved through mediation rather than combat. The changes were real, measurable, undeniable. Lina stood beside Corin, visibly pregnant now, watching wolves celebrate together. Many who'd mocked their wedding now genuinely followed, not through fear, but through proven leadership. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Marrying you or becoming alpha?" "Either. Both." His answer came without hesitation. "I regret the secrets. I regret the lost time. But I don't regret you. Never you." He turned to face her fully. "You chose me when I was nothing. That meant everything." "They laughed at us once," Lina said, remembering that humiliating ceremony. "Let them laugh. We know what we built." They walked together through the celebrating pack, hand in hand as always. Some wolves approached with genuine respect. Others kept their distance, still resistant but no longer actively opposing. The pack they'd built wasn't perfect, but it was transforming in ways that mattered. Later that evening, they climbed back to their mountain cabin. They'd kept it despite moving to Alpha quarters, using it as retreat when pack politics grew overwhelming. They stood on the familiar path where they'd first met, watching sunset paint the peaks in gold and crimson. 3 years later, their daughter ran through the pack's central grounds, known and loved, playing with children from families of every status. Corin had become an alpha other territories consulted, his reforms spreading beyond the Highland pack. Lina was sought by Lunas from distant territories, all wanting to understand how she transformed traditional power structures. But the truest measure of their success was simpler. They still walked the mountain paths together. Still treated each other as equals. Still chose partnership over performance. The pack they built stood as living proof that true strength lay not in domination, but in dignity. Not in claiming power over others, but in sharing power with them. Not in forcing wolves to submit, but in inviting them to rise. They had been mocked for choosing each other. But in choosing each other, they had chosen to transform everything. And that choice, made in mockery, tested by trial, proven through time, had been the most powerful of all. If you've journeyed with Lina and Corin through mockery to triumph, through trial to transformation, I invite you to share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to follow more tales of overlooked wolves who became unforgettable leaders, and tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated? What happened when you proved them wrong?